Hello all, welcome to my channel. This is Shravya and I'm going to talk about glucose homeostasis in this video. So, without any further delay, let's get started. Well-fed state. 1 to 4 hours after we have our food. We are talking about glucose homeostasis. So it is nothing but the balance of the glucose. Hence we don't want the hypoglycemia we've got by having our food staying retained in our body. In order to reduce that hyperglycemia, we now need a hypoglycemic hormone, which is insulin. So that is why the well-fed state is an insulin dominant phase. And glycogenesis, lipogenesis, glycolysis are the three pathways through which the insulin operates in order to cause the hypoglycemia. Now let's just discuss about the regulation of each and every pathway in detail. Before I'd like to start explaining this slide, I'd like to let you note down about 4 statements, of which the first statement is, when a particular reaction is happening, the enzyme which is catalyzing that particular reaction will always be inhibited by the product of that reaction. For example, glucose 6-phosphate is the product of reaction catalyzed by hexokinase, and hexokinase is allosterically inhibited by glucose 6-phosphate. Likewise, also the substrate of a particular irreversible reaction will always be the allosterical activator of enzyme catalyzing that particular irreversible reaction. For example, the reaction catalyzed by phosphofructokinase type 1 is having its substrate to be fructose 6-phosphate, and this fructose 6-phosphate is an allosteric activator of PFK1. And the third statement is, when a particular enzyme belongs to a metabolic pathway which is activated by insulin, it will always be activated upon dephosphorylation. For example, glycogen synthase belongs to a metabolic pathway, that is glycogenesis, which is activated by insulin. So, glycogen synthase will always be activated upon dephosphorylation by phosphatase, which is also called as phosphohydrolase, which belongs to the class of hydrolases. Then, the fourth statement, which is, when a particular enzyme belongs to a metabolic pathway which is activated by a hyperglycemic hormone like glucagon or epinephrine, will always be activated upon phosphorylation. For example, glycogen phosphorylase. It belongs to the metabolic pathway which is glycogenolysis, and the hyperglycemic hormones will activate the glycogen phosphorylase, which belongs to the pathway glycogenolysis, by phosphorylation. So these 4 statements are very important for you to remember and understand glucose homeostasis. And let's just start the slide. Regulators of various glycolytic enzymes. In order to regulate a particular metabolic pathway, we should always concentrate on enzymes catalyzing the irreversible reactions of that particular pathway. And the enzymes catalyzing irreversible reactions of glycolytic pathway are 3 in number, which are hexokinase, phosphofructokinase, and pyruvate kinase. Now let's see what are the factors regulating those particular enzymes. The first one, hexokinase. Here comes the proof of first statement. Inhibition by glucose 6-phosphate. The reaction which is catalyzed by hexokinase has its product to be glucose 6-phosphate, which is the allosterical inhibitor of hexokinase. And it doesn't have any inducers or activators, it is just inhibited by glucose 6-phosphate. Coming to PFK1 or phosphofructokinase 1. It has 3 factors activating it and 3 factors inhibiting it, out of which fructose 6-phosphate, the substrate of reaction catalyzed by PFK1, is the allosteric activator of it. And then the second thing, AMP. AMP is the allosteric activator of phosphofructokinase 1. Of course, in the case of well-fed state, the level of AMP will be more and the level of ATP will be less. So the PFK1 is always activated by AMP, and this PFK1 can let the glycolysis proceed further. And I can explain you why. In well-fed state, insulin will be the dominant hormone. So the glucagon or epinephrine or any other hyperglycemic hormones cannot let the beta oxidation to take the upper hand, and this makes the ATP level very low within the body. I mean within the mitochondria of the cell, also within the cytosol of the cell. So the AMP will always hold the upper hand and it remains PFK1 activator, and PFK remains activated and the glycolysis happily proceeds further. The fructose 2,6 bisphosphate is another allosteric activator of PFK1. I'll get back to that later. Coming to ATP, as I have explained you before, in the well-fed state, insulin takes the dominant hand, so hyperglycemic hormones must be less in their level, so they can't activate the beta oxidation, and beta oxidation cannot give the ATP out, so ATP cannot hold the dominant hand. AMP will always be greater at its level, hence ATP cannot inhibit PFK1, and PFK1 will let the glycolysis go ahead. Coming to citrate, yes, it is the allosteric inhibitor of the phosphofructokinase 1. The citrate is formed by the combination of 4-carbon compound oxaloacetate and 2-carbon compound acetyl coenzyme A, where you get acetyl coenzyme A in turn from the pyruvate through the enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase, and this pyruvate dehydrogenase is activated by insulin. So the citrate which is formed due to the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A by pyruvate dehydrogenase will only inhibit the PFK1, so that more amount of glucose is not channeled into glycolysis, and some amount of glucose will be left for the synthesis of glycogen as well in the well-fed state. Coming to low pH, yes, it is also an allosteric inhibitor of the phosphofructokinase. Coming to pyruvate kinase, it has two factors of which one activates pyruvate kinase and the other inhibits pyruvate kinase. Fructose 1,6 bisphosphate might not be the direct substrate of pyruvate kinase, but in the pathway of glycolysis, fructose 1,6 bisphosphate is present ahead of pyruvate kinase only. So it actually activates pyruvate kinase allosterically, whereas cyclic AMP is the factor which promotes the phosphorylation. So when pyruvate kinase belongs to the glycolytic pathway, which is activated by insulin, there is no chance that it is going to be activated upon phosphorylation. As I have explained you in the third statement amongst the 4 statements I have told you before, it always gets inactivated upon phosphorylation. So cyclic AMP is the inhibitor of pyruvate kinase. So this is the way I have explained regulation of glycolysis. The main important enzymes catalyzing the irreversible reactions of glycolytic pathway are activated and inhibited by all these following factors said. So let's just discuss about fructose 2,6 bisphosphate and the role of it in glucose homeostasis in the coming slide. Yes, this is the beautiful flowchart which explains you really very well about the way fructose 2,6 bisphosphate works. Firstly, you can see the glucagon at the upper part of the picture, which is activating the cyclic AMP. It indicates glucagon activating adenylyl cyclase and adenylyl cyclase converting ATP into cyclic AMP. This is the way glucagon increases the level of cyclic AMP within the cytosol of the cell, and this cyclic AMP will now activate cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase, an enzyme which phosphorylates another enzyme, as the name itself says. We all know that an enzyme which is holding the name kinase at the end will most probably, of course, always be the phosphorylating enzyme. So this cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase activated by cyclic AMP now will cause the phosphorylation of an enzyme which is having 2 units which will result in the activation of one unit and the inactivation of other. Now, the enzyme which is having two units contains one to be the PFK2 or phosphofructokinase 2, and the other unit is fructose 2,6 bisphosphatase. Fructose 2,6 bisphosphatase will reduce the level of fructose 2,6 bisphosphate, whereas PFK2 will synthesize fructose 2,6 bisphosphate. When fructose 2,6 bisphosphate is the factor which causes the activation of PFK1 is synthesized by PFK2. PFK2 must belong to the group of enzymes which increase the glycolysis. So, it is the pathway which is activated by insulin. Hence, it gets activated upon dephosphorylation and it gets inactivated upon phosphorylation. Vice versa is fructose 2,6 bisphosphatase. Fructose 2,6 bisphosphatase doesn't like the glycolysis to proceed, so it breaks the fructose 2,6 bisphosphate and reduces the activation of PFK and reduces the glycolysis. So this explains that fructose 2,6 bisphosphatase likes the hyperglycemic hormone induced pathways to proceed ahead. Hence, it must probably be the enzyme which is activated upon phosphorylation and inactivated upon dephosphorylation. As I've said that cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase causes the phosphorylation of the entire enzyme which is having two units. What must be the result probably? Yes, PFK2 is inactivated and fructose 2,6 bisphosphatase is activated, because PFK2 likes glycolysis to proceed ahead and fructose 2,6 bisphosphate doesn't like the glycolysis proceed ahead. This is the result. And now this entire unit is going to be dephosphorylated by phosphatase, which is also called as phosphohydrolase, which is activated by insulin. So insulin activates protein phosphohydrolase or phosphatase, which causes the dephosphorylation of the protein we've been talking about. So PFK2 is activated and fructose 2,6 bisphosphate is inactivated, because PFK2 gets activated upon dephosphorylation and fructose 2,6 bisphosphate gets inactive upon dephosphorylation. You know the reason. And now, in the state of well-fed condition, we will always have the insulin to hold upper hand. So insulin will activate protein phosphohydrolase, which will cause the dephosphorylation of the enzyme, which causes the activation of PFK2 and inactivation of fructose 2,6 bisphosphatase. The net result is increase in the level of fructose 2,6 bisphosphate, because the enzyme breaking it is now remaining inactivated and the enzyme synthesizing it is now activated. So fructose 2,6 bisphosphate can proceed further and activate PFK1, and PFK1 can let the glycolysis move ahead. Whereas in the case of hyperglycemic hormone dominant state such as fasting or early fasting, the vice versa happens. This is the way there will be a beautiful battle between insulin and hyperglycemic hormones to cause the glucose homeostasis. Let's just get to the other slide. We all know that glucokinase is the enzyme which catalyzes the reaction catalyzed by hexokinase, that is phosphorylation of glucose at its 6th carbon, forming the glucose 6-phosphate from glucose. But why on earth is this glucokinase even existing when we already have hexokinase? Moreover, the glucokinase will come into the picture and act over the glucose only when the serum glucose level is more than or equal to 100 milligrams per deciliter. Then what is the use of glucokinase? There is a very huge significance behind it. It has two big functions of it, regarding which I will be explaining right now. And the source of this information is Harper. The glucokinase is an enzyme which has a very high Km value, and we all know that Michaelis-Menten constant of an enzyme is inversely proportional to the affinity of that enzyme towards its substrate. So, the glucokinase, being an enzyme having high Km value, will always have less affinity towards glucose. This is why it needs the glucose value to be more than or equal to 100 milligrams per deciliter for it to act on glucose. And now this is making it have two advantages. The first one, the important function performed by glucokinase, which is present at the hepatocytes, that is liver cells. We all know that whenever is that we have a carbohydrate rich meal, it enters the gut and gets digested and converts into simple absorbable forms, which is glucose, mannose and other substances, and this glucose gets absorbed into the portal circulation from the gut, and this portal circulation will throw its content into the liver, and then the hepatic veins will again receive the substances from liver and they reach the general circulation. The glucose which is received by the liver through the portal circulation is converted into glycogen and also the lipids during the well-fed state, so that more amount of glucose is not entering into the peripheral circulation and more amount of glucose is not reaching the peripheral organs, which is not good for the body glucose homeostasis. So this is the way the glucokinase is removing the portal blood glucose before the blood and glucose enter the peripheral organs through the general systemic circulation. Coming to the second purpose served by glucokinase is by the glucokinase which is present at the beta cells of islets of Langerhans of pancreas. So the beta cells of pancreas will be perfused by the glucose loaded blood after the meal we had. This makes the glucokinase start acting over the glucose it has received from the circulation, and this results in the increased glycolysis, because glycolysis is the pathway activated by insulin during the well-fed state. We've been discussing since so long that well-fed state is insulin dominant stage, and this is the way insulin operates to cause the regulation of glucose during the well-fed state and all that. But why, or how is this insulin even entering into the blood and causing all these functions, is what the glucokinase explains. So the ATP increases whenever is that the glycolysis is excessively happening because of the glucokinase in the beta cells of pancreas, and this increased ATP will cause the closure of ATP potassium channel, as the flowchart below the slide indicates, and the closure of the ATP potassium channel will prevent the potassium efflux, and potassium efflux prevention will cause the membrane depolarization, and we know that the membrane depolarization activates the voltage gated calcium channels, and voltage gated calcium channels will cause the insulin exocytosis, and this insulin as a hormone is released into the blood from the Deckles endocrine gland, which is the pancreas, and in this way the insulin acts through many pathways and causes the balance of glucose within the blood. And this is the beauty of the glucokinase. It has many functions behind it which are very important for the glucose homeostasis to happen. Coming to the one, yes, we've talked about the glycolysis, which is one of the pathways through which the insulin operates in order to reduce the hyperglycemia we are having in our body after we had our meal during the well-fed state, which is 1 to 4 hours after we have our food. And now we are going to see the regulation of glycogenesis. There's nothing complicated in this slide, just listen to me carefully. As I've said before, the third statement amongst the 4 statements I've explained says that an enzyme which is belonging to the pathway activated by insulin will always get activated upon dephosphorylation. Now, as I'm talking about the glycogen synthase, which belongs to glycogenesis, which is a pathway which is activated by insulin, will always get activated upon dephosphorylation. So let's just start the slide explanation. The first thing, epinephrine. Epinephrine is the hyperglycemic hormone, or one of the hyperglycemic hormones, which again activates the adenylyl cyclase and this active adenylyl cyclase will now act upon the ATP and convert ATP into cyclic AMP. This cyclic AMP will activate the cyclic AMP dependent kinase, and the cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase is now activated by cyclic AMP, which is going to cause the phosphorylation of glycogen synthase. And this glycogen synthase gets inactivated upon phosphorylation because it is belonging to the pathway which is activated by insulin. And there is another function of cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase, which is phosphorylating and activating the inhibitor. Once this inhibitor, which is phosphorylated by cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase, converts into inhibitor phosphate, will now cause the inhibition of protein phosphatase. And what is this protein phosphatase? It is the enzyme which is activated by insulin. So insulin activates protein phosphatase, and this will in turn cause the dephosphorylation of inactive glycogen synthase, which causes the activation of it. So if we want to win a war, we can at one side strengthen our own army, and at the other side can also make the army of the opponent weak. This is how the insulin works. At one side, activating the protein phosphatase, it will dephosphorylate and activate the glycogen synthase. In this way, it has strengthened its own army, and now it's time to lose or decrease the strength of opponent's army. And how is it going to happen? By phosphodiesterase. Just look at the cyclic AMP in this slide. This cyclic AMP is converted into 5' AMP by the enzyme phosphodiesterase, and this phosphodiesterase is activated by insulin. This is how the cyclic AMP's level is reduced by the phosphodiesterase, and this is how the cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase remains inhibited, so that it neither can inactivate glycogen synthase nor it can activate the inhibitor. So let's just look at this slide from two perspectives. First perspective, insulin. What does insulin do? It activates the glycogen synthase by dephosphorylating it through protein phosphatase. And the second one, it activates the phosphodiesterase, and this phosphodiesterase will convert cyclic AMP into 5' AMP. From the perspective of epinephrine, epinephrine increases the adenylyl cyclase activity. Increase in adenylyl cyclase activity will result in the increased cyclic AMP. The cyclic AMP will activate cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase, and cyclic AMP dependent protein kinase will at one side inactivate the enzyme glycogen synthase B upon phosphorylation, and at the other side will activate the inhibitor upon phosphorylation again, and this inhibitor phosphate will again inactivate the protein phosphatase, so that this protein phosphatase cannot activate the glycogen synthase by causing the dephosphorylation of it. This is another beauty of the battle between insulin and hyperglycemic hormones to maintain the glucose homeostasis. Coming to the last slide. Yes, regulation of lipogenesis. Amongst the three pathways, we are done with glycolysis and glycogenesis. The third pathway is lipogenesis, through which the insulin operates in order to reduce the hyperglycemia we have in our body because of the food we had in well-fed state. So what is lipogenesis? The synthesis of triacyl glycerol. Where do you get the triacyl glycerol from? From fatty acids and glycerol, of which we are discussing about the synthesis of fatty acids, which is de novo synthesis of fatty acids. And we all have we have rate limiting enzymes for all the pathways, the regulation of which will ultimately regulate the entire metabolic pathway. So for de novo synthesis of fatty acid, acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase is one such rate limiting enzyme, and it has three factors affecting it, of which the first one is insulin, and second one is citrate, and third one are long chain fatty acids. And this acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase, as the picture shows, will convert the acetyl coenzyme A into malonyl coenzyme A, and this malonyl coenzyme A will again inhibit CPT1. We'll discuss about CPT1 in the other videos I talk about glucose homeostasis, but now acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase is inhibited by long chain fatty acids. What we are talking about phase 1 of glucose homeostasis, which is well-fed state, which is insulin dominant stage. So hyperglycemic hormones can no longer increase the level of long chain fatty acids because hormone sensitive lipase, which is present at the adipose tissues, remains inactive. So when hyperglycemic hormones cannot activate the hormone sensitive lipase, the HSL, which is hormone sensitive lipase, cannot convert the TAG at the adipose tissue into long chain fatty acids and glycerol. So the long chain fatty acids cannot inactivate acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase, and insulin is of course present at greater levels because well-fed state is the insulin dominant stage, and also the citrate level is more because insulin activates pyruvate dehydrogenase, and pyruvate is converted into acetyl coenzyme A in the presence of pyruvate dehydrogenase, and acetyl coenzyme A binds with oxaloacetate and forms the citrate. So the supporters of acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase, insulin and citrate, are present in adequate quantities, and long chain fatty acids which inhibits acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase are present in lower levels. So acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase remains activated, and acetyl coenzyme A remains converting into malonyl coenzyme A, and malonyl coenzyme A can participate in de novo synthesis of fatty acids, and this is the way the glucose we've got is converted into lipids, and this is the way insulin operates through the lipogenesis in order to reduce the hyperglycemia we have in our body due to the food we had. And this is the first phase of the glucose homeostasis, which is the well-fed state. This is what the physiology happening in the body is during 1 to 4 hours after we have our food. And thank you.